recording this call? Because I don't see recording on.
Yeah, I just started it.
Okay, cool. Hey, hi, Sangram, Sahil. Can you guys hear me well?
Yep, all good.
Okay, cool. So just on the background side, since just there are four of us, help me understand what you guys are into, and then probably we'll start on the AWS side. Hello, Sangram, Sahil.
Oh, the ball's in our court, is it? Okay. So I'm Sangram, and I was here just out of curiosity to see how the event is going to be, especially for something scheduled for Bhubaneswar, to be honest.
Understood.
Just to gauge, the level of interest that people have this side, like Ashirwad was saying, things are a bit slow, even though we do have a lot of ODIs working in the IT industry and all. I come with a little over 15 years of experience, and majority of my experience is on cloud.
Nice.
And I work on all the three major platforms, and yeah, I mean, serverless technologies are something that has been there for quite some time. I mostly work, or I do a lot of trainings, to be honest. So I work a lot on Azure, functions, AWS, Lambda, yeah, here and there, as and when the work comes. I've been an author, published a book, been a co-founder in the past. A lot of things over the last 15 years. Like I said, I was more interested to see a network. That's the main reason I hopped in onto this session. Yeah.
How about you, Sahil? I mean, just four of us, right? So I'm just trying to do a bit of networking as well, just to see the interest so that we can align things, in certain directions.
Sure.
Sahil, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Sahil, can you help us understand what you do, what you are into?
Sir, I am a student, sir.
Okay, cool. Any knowledge on AWS side? Anything that you have tried?
So I am exploring actually in serverless architecture.
Okay.
For presentation, sir.
Cool, understood. Okay, guys, let's start. I think let's not waste too much time. Let's see, if people are pouring in down the road. It's already 18:07. Okay, so as Ashir explained, right? So see, I've been working in this industry for over 12 years now. Okay. Been working on serverless for last 2.5 years. Okay. Been developing a lot of different solutions when it comes to majorly on AWS, when it comes to Lambdas, API gateways, DynamoDBs. There are different things. Okay, so to begin with, let's understand the serverless first, and I'm not going through different sites here. The main reason is I want to promote you guys to use the native documentations which are there available on AWS, and which is quite comprehensive to go through and understand how different things works. Okay, so before we jump into Lambda, right? So I think both of you guys have done some bit of stuff with cloud computing. So see, what is serverless? Serverless is basically it's not that you're running something without server. It's just that whenever you design or deploy something using serverless, you would be augmenting the infrastructure portion, okay, to the cloud provider, be it AWS, be it Azure, be it Google, anything. Okay, and when you move infrastructure, when you augment your responsibilities of infrastructure to any public cloud provider, what are the different needs that you have? One of the first need that you need is compute, right? So whenever you have an application, you need a normal, virtual machine to run your code, run your application. So usually, for example, if you go to AWS, you create an instance using EC2. Okay, that's your typical model when you create an application, host it on EC2, and then connect that to your DNS and get it up and running. That's the normal layout that you usually have. So what is different in serverless, right? What are how do you approach this kind of application architecture, right? So when you are hosting any application on EC2, okay, what happens is, uh, for example, if you're running a website, okay, on an EC2 machine, it's an Apache server or Nginx, whatever you are using, and you have a backend connected to database, and all the things are running on EC2 machine. Okay, now understand this thing. Website is a classic example in which you would have to serve the requests when a subscriber or when a user is trying to go and visit that website. Then only you would be getting a traffic, then only you would be utilizing those resources on EC2. Okay, that's the typical framework. It's basically an event driven uh, architecture that you have, right? So whenever somebody says that www.google.com, one of the servers on Google site, helps you to get that website loaded, right? That's the typical framework that we have. Now think of it this way. What if we have a framework which helps you to run your code whenever you need, which means that, for an example, this is the typical framework that serverless provides, that whenever you are running a service, okay, you are simply giving them a code which that infrastructure provider needs to run whenever somebody requests for it. Okay, and rest all the things mean your compute, your availability, scalability, fault tolerance, everything would be managed by the Amazon or any cloud provider that you are using. Okay, that's the typical usage of serverless. So if in this case, what happens is whenever you're running a website, you basically are, whenever you get a request on your website, then that request reaches to your serverless application, and that application gets triggered, and that's how that request gets served through that particular compute. Okay, now once that request has been served, that infrastructure again gets deleted, or it goes into a warm bucket stage. Okay, but that's how typical serverless infrastructure works. So it's not that it's something like EC2 wherein you would be charged based on how many hours you've been running instance. In typical serverless infrastructure, you would always be charged based on how much usage that you have done, and the parameters of usage would vary from service to service. For an example, let's consider Lambda. That's the topic for today, right? So when you're talking about Lambda, what happens is a typical EC2 instance gets charged by hours. How many hours that you have used that EC2 instance for, right? Versus when you are running something on Lambda, it gets built in milliseconds. This is a latest change which was introduced in reInvent. So how many milliseconds that you've been using? So typical billing in AWS Lambda is how many milliseconds that infrastructure was used, plus how many MB of RAM that you have utilized. So all these different parameters helps to determine the cost of your usage. Okay, and that's how you get charged for using Lambda. So Lambda is nothing but a compute power that you get on demand. Okay, whenever somebody requests for that particular service. That's the typical behavior of AWS Lambda. Now, see, Okay, this is the flow that I wanted to talk about. So basically, how you can how you can create a Lambda function. Okay, what are the different nitty-gritties around Lambda function? Like how do you connect different Lambda functions? How you can connect triggers? How you can connect different services into Lambda functions? All those stuff gets that's something that we are going to go through today as much as time permits. So see, AWS Lambda, as I mentioned, it's a compute service that helps you to run different applications onto your infrastructure. So whenever you deploy something in AWS in form of Lambda function, you need to define how to trigger that function. And once that function gets triggered, there is a business logic which you can write in that Lambda function, which would be executed, and in return you get some response. You can implement both synchronous and asynchronous operations using AWS Lambda. Okay, and see, feature wise, let's talk about different features that you get. So first of all, programming model, like uh, Lambda supports different runtime environments, be it Go, Python, Node, Java. Just announced they are going to support Docker images as well. And they with Docker images, you would be able to create a custom runtime environment with PHP as well. So C#, like the .NET, is already supported in native Lambda as a runtime model. Scaling. See, what happens is one of the main aspect that being a startup, whenever you go through, is how to determine how much traffic you should be getting onto your website. So for an example, I'm typical taking a website example because that example would help us to go through the whole session very conveniently. So for an example, today you are having 10, 15 users, and tomorrow, you launch something, it got hit, and you are, overnight you're getting what, 1,000 or 10,000 users onto your website. In a typical EC2 instance or in typical infrastructure, you would basically be configuring either configuring auto scaling, or you'll be basically expecting, to grow your infrastructure as and when you are getting more and more traffic onto your application. Now with Lambda, what happens is, as I mentioned earlier, you are basically augmenting your infrastructure, responsibilities to the cloud provider. So in scaling, what it means is basically you don't have to take care of anything. Today you get 10 requests, tomorrow you get 1,000 requests or 10,000 requests. Lambda service itself would take care of those scaling. So whenever you need to expand, it will expand on its own. Whenever you need to, decrease the amount of, parallel services that you need to run. So all those things will be taken care by Lambda itself. Concurrency controls. So for example, whenever you are starting up your any applications, you can define a concurrency model. Concurrency model as in, so for example, if I have something which is I want to serve that as a near real time or a real time in terms of any application. So I can define a concurrency model, which means that, on any point in time, there would be, for example, if you define 10 as your concurrency limit, any given point in time, you would be having 10 instances of that Lambda function available to serve the request. And so you can also, kind of control the concurrency, how much control you want on your services. You can define priorities as well in terms of concurrency, that, what are the different Lambda functions that you want to, basically give more, more priority in terms of service, right? Asynchronous invocations, event source mapping. So see, those are, as I mentioned, you can create both kind of, services. You can define both, whether it's synchronous or asynchronous kind of invocations. So you can have something in which a Lambda function would execute and then expect a response coming back from that particular Lambda function, or in you can define something which is an asynchronous, which means that, okay, I got a request in my Lambda, I processed something, and then I maybe published SNS topic, or maybe I publish something into a database, anything like that, without responding back to the original initiator, right? Event source mapping. So there are multiple services which are connected within Lambda. So for an example, there is a new file which got added into S3 bucket. And based on that file, you want to run certain Lambda functions. You want to run certain business logic around that, right? So you can basically map those events directly onto your Lambda function as a triggers, which would help you to manage the different events that you receive within your AWS infrastructure and create different business logics around it. Okay. Destinations, again, being, AWS is a very, very well connected within their services, right? So if you have something, for example, if something is coming into an S3 bucket and you want to, process, for example, an image coming in from S3 bucket and maybe create a favicon out of it, or create a lower resolution image out of it, and then, put it in different S3 bucket, you can do that. You are collecting certain information in form of logs in any S3 bucket, and then you want to process those information and store it into database. So you can basically manage destinations as well, like from where you are getting the events and where do you want to push events to. It could be an SNS topic, it could be database, it could be S3 bucket, it could be anything. Blueprints. Okay, blueprints is a good way to start working with Lambda. So what happens is, I'm new to Lambda, but I want to try with certain different ready to use templates, right? So Lambda supports different blueprints as well, which can help you to get started very quickly. Testing and deployment tools, application templates. Those are like, say application templates as in, there are different pre-built application templates available from third-party tools or native tools as well, which you can utilize. Testing and deployment tools, you can do a lot of testing using AWS CLI. You can use GitLab CI or any other deployment tools as well, which is very well supported, through which you can utilize deployments of different Lambda functions. Okay, so these are different features which we usually see when it comes to Lambda. One thing that I wanted to talk about is limitations of Lambda. So see, it's not an ideal scenario. Like whenever you talk about a new service, right, you need to understand in which scenario this service would work, in which scenario this service would fail. Okay, so how do you understand that? So there are certain limitations which are there in Lambda. Those limitations have been increased recently as well. So for example, one of the limitation earlier used to be memory. So memory size earlier used to be 5 GB, which is now increased to 10 GB in this reInvent 2020 release, right? So see, where you should try utilizing Lambda and where you should avoid utilizing Lambda. Okay, different examples. First, so where you should try avoiding Lambdas is wherever you are hitting the limits of your quotas here available on Lambda. For an example, if you have something which takes batch processing, or which takes more than 15 minutes to process certain amount of data. For example, you're doing some data analysis or any big data processing. Okay, you should try avoid doing those on Lambdas, because there are limitations in terms of how many seconds or how many minutes you can run particular Lambda functions. Of course, there are different ways you can avoid hitting this limits. For an example, when you are near to your timeout, you can pass on that context from one Lambda to another to initiate another Lambda function which can continue the process. But in general, I'm saying these are some of the limitations which we need to take care of. So if something is which is very heavy in terms of your memory, right, you should avoid doing it. For example, something which needs GPU is not available in Lambda. So if you're doing anything machine learning or anything like that, there are other ways to do it, not natively using lambdas. Okay. Something which is heavy in terms of third party, you know, how do you say, third party libraries. Okay, so there is a limitation in terms of how much code base you can upload in a single Lambda function, right? So if you're having a monolith application, you cannot just dump it into a Lambda function and, you know, start utilizing it. It doesn't work that way, right? So that's something that you need to take care. If you have something in which you need a lot of cached memory, right? So for example, if you are doing again data processing of something in which you are creating a temporary file, okay, so Lambda has a limitation in which you cannot use storage more than 512 MB, right? So see, these are some of the limitation that you need to understand before we, you know, jump and start utilizing Lambda functions, right? So for example, you know, these are some of the limitations. So 15 minutes is the maximum time that you can run a Lambda function. Memory wise, it has been increased and it is good amount right now. 10 GB is what you can allocate to a Lambda function. Okay, layers, you can define 5 layers. Now I'll explain in brief what is layers going forward. Concurrency is something which is 500 to 3000 per region, which again varies from region to region. If you're going to US East or West, there you would find more burst concurrency available. Invocation payload, this is also something that you need to understand. So for example, if you are processing an image file, you know, directly from an API endpoint, you cannot, you know, process that directly as an invocation payload for a Lambda function if it crosses the 6 MB line. Okay, so ideally what we do is whenever there is something related to images, what we do is we create an API endpoint which creates a pre-signed URL to put files, images directly onto S3 bucket. And from that S3 bucket, we create a trigger to a Lambda function, which would pick up the file from there. So see, there are certain limitations that you need to understand. So you cannot put any invocation payload more than 6 MB when you are invoking a Lambda function. Deployment packages. So as I mentioned to you, right? So the whole code base that you are putting into a single Lambda function, there are certain limitations to that as well. So if you are unzipped, a code base should not be more than 250 MB. Zipped should not be available more than 50 MB. So these are some of the limitations that you need to identify, that you need to understand. One thing which is released in this reInvent just 2 days back is this container image support that is available as 10 GB. I'm yet to, you know, do some testing with this, but yeah, this is something new which has been released. So now you can run Lambda function using your container images as well. So that's something new which has happened. Okay, so that's something that you need to look forward to. Okay, now see, I'll take you through a simple Lambda function first, and I'll help you understand what are the different things that you could do. Now I'm just doing something as a very straightforward. You know, first we'll create a very blank function first. Okay, now understand one thing. What are the different things that you see? So when you go into create function, you see 4 options. Ideally, before 3 days, there were only 3. So this container image was something which is released in this reInvent. So if you are using an Amazon ECR repository where you are, you know, hosting all your container images, you can utilize that. But let's stick to author from scratch for now. SAR, serverless app repository, you will see a lot of applications. So Alexa scale, for an example, Node.js. So see, Datadog, a log forwarder. So if you're using a monitoring tool, Datadog, you can forward a lot of data from here to their instances. So these are different examples that you could do. But okay, user blueprint will come to this after this one. So there are, you know, certain examples, sample templates which are available, which you could use. But let's create something which is very basic right now. And let's see. I want you to go through the structure first. Now understand this thing. So what do you need when you create a Lambda function. You have a function name, you have a runtime. As I mentioned, there are varieties of runtime which are supported. So .NET Core, Go, Java, Node, Python, Ruby. These are latest supported. Other options that you see, you can create custom runtimes as well based on your requirement. But let's stick to Python for now because I've been coding things on Python itself. Now understand this thing. Whenever you run a Lambda function, right, you need to allow that Lambda to have certain permission to accept the incoming triggers and process those triggers in form of, storing information in database or putting some files in S3. It could be anything, right? So you need an execution role which would help you to, kind of create and allow, Lambda function to execute this particular function. Now, we are not going to do anything. VPC, I'm going to take care in the next slide when we do this. So let's see. OK, so this is how, a typical Lambda function looks like. You'll see on top, you'll see configuration, permission, and monitoring here. OK. Configuration is where all the templating main configuration of Lambda function would be. We'll go through these things step by step. Permissions are where you would be seeing your role. OK, if you are using any kind of certificates using ACM. OK, resource based policy, we don't have anything right now. Auditing compliance, we haven't configured anything. Monitoring is where you would be able to see all different statistics, related to this Lambda function. So invocation, duration, success ratios, throttles. OK, you will see logs here as well. Not right now, but once it gets started. Let's go back to configuration. So see, there are two parts to Lambda function, rather three parts. OK, so triggers, destination, and layers. Triggers means where the request should come from. And as I mentioned, there is lots of options that you can do. You can connect your Alexa skills as well. You can have an API gateway. You have your load balancer. You can directly host this, onto CloudFront. You can do CloudWatch as well. CloudWatch is something, you have certain logs coming up and you want to utilize that. Or you want to use EventBridge, which would have different, rules coming in. So see, there are different options. I told you one thing earlier, right? So if you have an S3 bucket, OK, and which I want to do, all object create event. Whenever somebody, for example, whenever somebody creates a new file into my S3 bucket under certain folder, I want to invoke this Lambda function, right? So I can utilize this. OK, so these are all triggers. Triggers means from where Lambda function should get invoked based on which event, right? So in Lambda, everything works on event source mapping. So this is the source, and every source would have its own template of what kind of a structure, what kind of details we would get in form of event, which would trigger this Lambda function. Destination, just a second. Destination is something in which you basically define where to put this information, right? So for an example, I want to put something in SNS topic. So I process something in part of this Lambda function, and I want to, put that image, put those events into this particular, Lambda function. Just a second. OK, so I want to, whatever data that I've processed within this Lambda function, I want to put that out in form of event in an SNS topic, right? I can do that in form of destination. Now, this is something new and very less people are using. New as in for serverless folks, it's very old, but yeah, a lot of people are not utilizing this. Layers is basically, for example, I'll from Python's perspective. So in Python, you always have, modules that you import from, external CDNs, right? You're using different libraries. For example, I want to use pandas, right? Now, every time when you want to utilize pandas within your Lambda function, you always need to import that. So the packet size of your function remains always more. The bulkier the packet size is, it's going to take more time for you to load this function, right? What we can do is we can utilize those common libraries or common modules in form of layers. So for an example, what you can do is it's kind of an added modules library that you have in form of layers. So whenever you have something which is shared all across different, Lambda functions, or you are utilizing those as libraries all across your application, you can put that in form of layers. Okay. If we go down, we will see a functional code window here. It's a IDE where you can deploy different things. I mean, you will see different codes, and you can write your code here as well if you want. Okay, and this is something that is there. Let's move to next thing, runtime settings. So as I mentioned, you can have different runtimes. This is something that you need to understand. Handler is something which is required for any newbie who is starting with Lambda function. So ideally what happens is, for example, in your directory, you have multiple py files, right? What is a starting point for a container? So if you're familiar with Docker containers, you always have a starting point, right? From where the function or the container reaches to, invoke different things, right? Similar thing, this is what handler does. So in this case, if you see, your file name is lambda underscore function dot py, and in that you have defined a handler called lambda underscore handler. Okay, now this is what the handler does. So if you see lambda underscore function, so your file name dot your handler name, this is how typical this thing stacks up. So handler is something that you need to understand. Without this, Lambda would not know. It's a mandatory attribute. So if you have not defined this correctly, you will always find errors, because this has to be precisely defined so that Lambda would know from where to go, from which file to which handler, right? Okay, if you're using any kind of signing in terms of ACM or anything, it comes here. Environment variable is something which needs to be used very wisely. So for an example, you are consuming a third-party API which has an API key, right? So for example, I'm using Git or anything, right, to put the code. So I cannot put API keys here, right? What we'll do is we'll keep API key as a reference, and we'll use environment variables in this thing. It's a simple key value pair method. What you can do is you can define your API key as a key and whatever value that you have. Sorry. So what happens in this case is, this is not part of your original code. In original code, you would simply be doing os.environment. So to load the environment variable from your container, right? This is typical similar stuff that you see when you run something with Docker containers. So environment variable is similar to that. These are the variables which can be utilized within your execution environment. Tags is again very typical to AWS. So you can tag your Lambda functions on different things, just to identify costs, just to identify different application, whatever you want to utilize it for. Okay, basic setting. This is something that we need to understand. You can put description, that's okay. As I mentioned, memory settings. So you can go up to 10 GB at max. Okay, 120 MB to 10 GB max. Timeout. As I mentioned, you can basically run this application for 15 minutes. By default, the timeout settings are for 3 seconds. So what happens is whenever you start a Lambda function, it will get timed out by 3 seconds. So this is something that you can increase or decrease based on your need. Now again, this is an execution role which we utilized earlier. Okay. What else? What else? Monitoring tool. This is okay. This is like by default uh, all the logs that you have written, right, which gets written into your CloudWatch logs. Okay, you can include or you can enable tracing, and you can enable enhanced monitoring in form of X-rays and everything. So this is something that we could do based on your needs. VPC, again, this is something very typical with your normal application, right? So whenever you have something in which you have certain limitation in let me give you an example. For example, I am running a Lambda function which is connected to the outside world from a web application, and I want to put something information, fetch, or put some information into a database. That database cannot be connected to the outside world, right? So you have to make sure that your Lambda function is within the same network in which your RDS or your database instance is. That is where VPC comes in handy, right? So VPC, what it does, it basically VPC is virtual private connection. So basically you would be associating your Lambda function within the same network in which you are running other application, so that those services can be accessed within the same network, right? So this is something which is you need to understand whenever you are using any kind of databases or any service which is not exposed to the outside world, and you want to access those information through a Lambda function, you need to access it using VPC. Okay, this is something not a very recent announcement, but there is an extension available right now, which would allow users to use an EFS file system connected to a Lambda function. So one of the limitations that I discussed earlier is, you know, you cannot write certain write files beyond certain limits, right? Now, what with EFS, what happens, it basically expands your storage. So if you want to write something in form of XLS file or CSVs or anything, and you want to generate that as an output, and you can also attach an external storage to it, an EFS system, which will help you to basically get an additional storage available to your existing system. Now state machine, those are okay. It's like step functions. So in step functions, you can have multiple Lambda function associated, and that's how the state machine is being loaded, but that's not something that will go through concurrency. Okay, so see, if you see unreserved account concurrency, so by default, every account that you have is reserved. Like it's having, at times you can only run 1,000 invocation. That's something that you can, it's a soft limit that you can get it increased through support, but you can define certain limits, certain configurations for this particular Lambda. So what I want to do is, for example, for this Lambda function, I want to, keep certain provision concurrency, which means that, I want to make sure that certain amount of Lambda functions are always on, right? So that is how I can define a provision concurrency here. Asynchronous invocation, as I explained earlier, without any dependency, if you want to utilize, you can do that. And last but not least, database proxies. This was something which was released in last reInvent, an RDS proxy service, in which you basically have to, have a proxy instance ahead of your RDS cluster, right? So you can add a database proxy directly here, which will help you to connect your Lambda function to the database. Now see throttle. Okay, so this basically would reset your throttle to 0. Again, whenever you are creating a Lambda function, you can create different versions or aliases of your Lambda functions as well. So for an example, if you are using any tools, like we in database, we've been using AWS SAM a lot. So by default in the template itself, it creates different versions whenever you deploy, a new Lambda function. So what you can do is, you see, this is the latest 6 minutes ago, aliases. That's something that you could do based on your needs if you want to create different versions of your existing Lambda function. So you can publish a new version, you can create a new alias, you can export the function. So if you want to download this existing function, you can do that as well. A Lambda at edge. Okay, so for an example, you are running something which is again very real time, and if you want to serve that Lambda function at edge locations, which is mostly available right now in US region. So for that, you can define that into Lambda at edge. How do you test this thing, right? So you can configure different test functions using this. You can give it some name here. You can give inputs. So as I mentioned, everything in Lambda works on JSON files, right, in form of events. So whatever triggers that you're configuring, based on that, you can configure different event sources. You can create different tests here, and then you can utilize this test function to invoke the Lambda function there and then itself. Let me delete this function, and then let me create something using uh, blueprint. So that, let's do hello world, a simple example, so that I can show you some more things. So again, see, this is again, as I mentioned, typical, templating available. I'm new to this. I don't know how to, execute Python based, Lambda function. I want to understand how the structure works. How can I do different things? That's how, you can utilize this templates to, get yourself started. Okay, so as I mentioned, same thing, nothing else. So if you put anything, whenever a new event would come, whatever value that you have, it will return first key value of your event. Okay, again, lambda function dot lambda underscore handler. I wanted to show you the thing so that so this is how you can test. So if you see, it returns a response object, which would give you the first key object value, right? Your request ID. So this is important. So see, these are the values that you got, and request ID. And this is what I wanted to show you. So the duration is 1.66 millisecond. It get rounded to per millisecond billing. Again, this is something new, just released in this reInvent. So if you see, build duration is only 2 milliseconds. Memory size by default, as I mentioned, it starts from 120 MB, which is what we had. Max memory that we use to invoke this is 48 MB. So init duration is 117 milliseconds. Again, see, now if we go into monitoring, we'll be able to see some numbers, I believe, not yet available. Yeah, it's still coming up anyways. Okay, so see, this is how it's gonna help you to execute and test different things with Lambda. Let's understand how the typical structure works. So in each handler that you do, you have event and context. Event is what you are going to get in form of trigger. That's the event template. It could be an API endpoint. It's again a JSON request. It could be a JSON request of S3 bucket, which is for a new file, a put request, right? So that way, different things could be there, and based on that event sample, you can basically write your own logic to execute different functions within this Lambda. And when you see return, this is how basically what is returning back. Are you returning back something to the service which help you to trigger, or you're simply putting something in return object which help you to just list out different things in this thing. Okay, so this is basics of Lambda. Okay, what else am I missing? Something managing, invoking, runtimes, working with Python. So as I mentioned, so yeah, you have handlers, you have context, logging, errors, tracing. What am I missing? Anything? Permission, managing function, you have layers, you have aliases. Yeah, this is all okay. Okay, fine. Let's, one thing that I wanted to talk to you about is, for example, if you're starting up something with Lambda, okay, in Lambda, so this is a very kind of a bare bones setup, right? So you are thinking of creating Lambda and just a single Lambda function, that's okay. But idea is to create different applications, you know, which might have multiple services and multiple Lambda functions, right? So it's always good to have certain frameworks to help you out. I think serverless.com, everybody would know that's the starting point for any serverless enthusiast. That's a framework that you could utilize. We've been using AWS SAM a lot in our, internal applications or any product that we are designing. It's called AWS Serverless Application Model. That's again end-to-end framework defined for you to basically, have a best practices in terms of templates, Lambda functions, how to structure different things within your applications, how to consume events, how to connect different sources. All those things would be available or accessible more better in any of this Lambda functions. Okay, so I'm going to stop my screen sharing now, and I'll keep the floor open for anybody to ask any question. I guess we have, okay, any questions, guys? Anything that you want to understand?
Sangram and Chandan, would you like to ask any questions?
Not really. I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. So, Ankit, there's one question from my end. What
Yes,
about
Ashwin.
tooling? What about the tooling support for AWS Lambda?
Tooling as in IDEs you're talking about? How
Yeah, for
can,
offline development, for local development, you can say.
okay, so what you can do is, see, if you use SAM or if you use AWS CLI, you can invoke the Lambda functions locally as well once it is deployed there. Okay, so see, understand one thing. When you're running something on EC2, it's nothing but compute, right? But when you're running something with serverless, it typically talks about somebody else's infrastructure, right? So I usually don't recommend to do local testing when it comes to serverless. Okay, there are open source tools also available. For example, there is a local stack. If you go and search on GitHub as a local stack, it's gonna give you a whole AWS local stack available on your local environment to execute and run anything when it comes to Lambdas or API gateways or anything like that. But a lot of time what happens is, see, Lambda is nothing, right? Lambda is basically connected to multiple service, then only you would be able to utilize those portions, right? So that's how, end-to-end testing would only be available on cloud.
Yeah, got it, Ankit. There was one more concern. Like, what about the security aspect of Lambda? You're making some serverless API using Lambda, and you want to perform some authentications. You don't want everyone to access your APIs. Only authenticated users can actually, access those API, which has some of the business content of your application. How do you manage that in
So
Azure Function?
So
Yeah.
what we do is basically we have API endpoints connected to a service called AWS Cognito, which provides you a user authentication service off the shelf. That's again another serverless service which AWS provides. So you can utilize that service to authorize the users first, and based on that token, you can allow users to invoke any other API endpoints. Okay, so once the token is available, based on that token, you can invoke different API endpoints. That's one way to do it. Then there are custom authorizer function that you can write on your application, within your application itself, which would authenticate the user first and then allow them to, traverse to different API endpoints and get certain specific information that you want to restrict.
Okay, got it. So it supports OpenID kind of a thing, right?
Correct.
Google-based authentications and all.
Correct.
Okay. So I have one final question from my end. So, most of the time, I don't think, AWS Lambda, stores the context or state of the function that is running after execution. Suppose
Correct.
you had a particular API, which needed to call three other things. Like suppose there is a business logic in which, you need to first confirm an order, then check whether you have it in the inventory, then you need to get the billing, and once you receive the payment, then only you can give a confirmation dialog to the user. So there are four API functions or action methods happening under the hood. So how do you manage it when you don't store the context or state of that particular request?
That's the typical. Okay, so serverless is completely stateless. Okay, what you get is see, within the Lambda function you have availability of thing called context. Okay, which helps you to run different functions. But the scenario which you explain, it can basically be done by different endpoints. Okay, what you can do is, for an example, whenever somebody says I want to buy now, you are going to first go and check the inventory, which is a live, access again before putting up an order, right? So there is a one endpoint which checks that, okay, the inventory is available, and it publishes an, a token in form of an SNS, a notification that, okay, fine, a queue that this is available. Based on that, you invoke another Lambda function, which is going to initiate payment for user. Once that payment is done, we sense like that Lambda function would put another event in the SNS, which says that, okay, my payment has been cleared for this customer, and that event would trigger third Lambda function, which would say that, okay, fine, so let's put an order for this particular user for this particular item. So see, context would help you to build, like events would help you, context and events, both of this thing would help you to build certain context for different service. And based on these events, what you can do is you can trigger different Lambda functions and achieve the end-to-end functionality that you're looking for.
Okay, perfect. That's perfect. So this function chaining kind of a thing, for that, you need to make an HTTP client and call them using their endpoints, right? This is what
Correct.
you meant to say, or use a message broker kind of a thing.
You can use both the architecture. So if you want that to be a front-end centric thing, right? So you can create a endpoint based method, right? Where you have different steps defined in client side CSS, like client side itself on the website. Second portion, again, with SNS, you can do message broker kind of a thing, where one Lambda would, publish an event, and based on that event, second Lambda gets triggered.
Got it. Got it, Ankit. There's this one last thing. Suppose your Lambda function took more than 15 minutes to run, and it abruptly stops working at that time. How do you manage at that particular scenario? You want that particular process to be completed, that particular request to give back a response to the user. How do you handle something like that?
So, like, can you elaborate the scenario? Like, in what sense you're saying that it would get abruptly, hang or anything like that?
Yeah, we have a timeout of 15 minutes, right? Our Lambda function
Correct.
cannot run more than 15 minutes.
Correct.
Suppose I have a business logic, in which I'm processing a stream-based content that I'm getting in the payload, and or else I'm doing something, something which shouldn't be done according to best practices, and I stumble upon a problem in which my Lambda function takes more than 15 minutes to execute that particular task. So at that time, how do you manage it? Do we have any kind of a retry policy? Like if it failed now, you can retry it again or something like that?
In asynchronous mode, you have retry attempts. Okay. But if you are doing something in a synchronous mode where you are supposed to reply back to the original initiator of that event, what's going to happen is as long as you hit the timeout limits, it's going to reply back with a status code that this is what has happened. Okay. It's not going to wait for anything else. But if you're running something in asynchronous mode, if the Lambda function gets abruptly closed, then it's going to try again. And based on the retry limits that you have configured, it's going to try to execute that particular function.
Perfect. Thank you, Ankit. That was all the question I had. Anything anyone would like to add up? Ankit is there to answer it.
Just a thing here, Ashirwad, this is just to add to what Ankit said. If you have any task that is probably gonna run longer than 15 minutes, Lambda is actually architecturally not the right service.
Correct.
So you should be looking at something else like batch or maybe your own cluster running in Kubernetes or something like that. But if you have anything that's running more than 15 minutes, Lambda will stop it automatically. There is nothing that you can do there actually. So either break it down so that it runs in 15 minutes, or architecturally, look at some other service that can be used for that particular task.
True indeed. Thank you, Sangram. Thank you, Ankit. I just wanted to know, if we have something, available which we can use to leverage to get out of this kind of a scenario. You never know, right? Because sometimes you expect some of the business steps to, get over in 10 seconds or 50 seconds, but due to some of the memory leak, so due to a bad code thing, it takes longer time. So somebody wrote a loop kind of a thing inside that accidentally because of a condition. It went on a recursion or else it's on a loop. Infinite loop, and it is unable to function. So I just wanted to know, how to handle this kind of a scenario.
No, that makes sense. I mean, there are functions available which would help you to get out of such situations, but architecturally, it's not recommended to use it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Ankit. It was really helpful. Thank you, Sangram, for adding up, and thank you, Chandan, for being a part of the session. And that's all from my end. Thank you, Ankit, for agreeing to join us for this and for this session and hosting it on Lambda 101. It was really helpful. I must admit, I came to know a lot about Lambda because I never had any experience with Lambda. I was a primary user of Azure Functions. It was really helpful, and I hope that you join as an speaker again for Serverless Days Bhubaneswar.
Sure, no problem.
Thank you, Ankit. Thank you, Sangram and Chandan, for joining in. Have a great weekend and stay safe. Take care. Thank you.
Bye-bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.